Welcome back to Detection Dispatch, the detection engineering show that I'll have to admit has taken me quite a bit of a minute to gather a proper trending threat scoop for you guys. But we are back with a no BS breakdown of what's really going on in SecOps land, all the way from the rise of infostealers to the downfall of beaconing and the kind of the leapfrogging of creds over phishing even. And of course, I mean, how could I not talk about the elephant in the room that just happened last week, the F5 breach, right? And I am joined by no better than Scott Rodgers. I gave him a call. Last time he was here, he gave us a full breakdown of, what was it, Scott? Prompt injections, I believe. Which
Yeah.
and we spent some time together at DEF CON. We've spent some, but just most recently, we spent some time in Chicago. So, Scott, how the hell are you? Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, talking about. And I mean, last time I saw you, you were captivating a room with your LLM talk. So, tell us.
Yeah, I've been good. Like I said, at Blue Team Con, we had a great talk, Kevin Gonzalez and I, on LLMs and, looking at analyzing alerts with LLMs. So, yeah, we had a lot of really good feedback from the audience after and went really well.
I don't think I've seen a breakdown of when to use it was, first of all, it's a comparison of LLMs across different variables, which ones were good to use, certain uses and others. But also you were like, just because you can use an LLM for a certain thing doesn't mean you probably should. Like, you can also do rejects. Like, that really hit home. Because everyone's trying to
Yeah.
LLM everything.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we got into in the talk that's kind of a little different than the name, but there's a lot of things that went into the creation of LLMs, and sometimes you can take some of those more basic parts and get a lot of value and do it at a lot higher scale. So an example of that is NER, is like named entity extraction, and that's, it uses similar things. It can be done in similar ways to how LLMs, work and their underlying technology. It's all kind of pretty similar, but how it's implemented and how it can scale is a lot different.
That was the aha moment I saw in, I think, everybody's eyes at Blue Team Con. Is that's when it just kind of hit, and that's when you know that it's like, oh yeah, actually, totally. But and we can probably cover a whole segment just on that alone, but we're gonna be talking about the M-Trends today, which was your idea actually to bring up. So I really appreciate that. Before we get into that though, what was not covered in the M-Trends, because the M-Trends, I think, were, and for those of you that don't know, the M-Trends is Mandiant's annual IR report based on their Mandiant IR engagements, right? It's completely built from frontline data, so it's not any kind of survey or anything like that or predictions per se, but it's just like, I like to think about it as a field guide of what they observed, right? Whenever they called that hotline when an incident happened, what their team observed of what attackers did last year. And we're going to be breaking that down. That was released, I believe, a little bit earlier in the summer, and the F5 breach per se happened last week. So I do want to start with that to get it out of the way, and then we can go and deep dive on some of the highlights from the M-Trends. But F5 breach, Scott. F5, October 15th, 2025. We, of course, we sent a
Yeah.
response to our customers. What the hell happened? And also, did you also see that apparently the attackers were running the source code through AI just to find additional vulnerabilities?
No, I hadn't seen that, but I believe it. Yeah, that's yeah, it's pretty big happening in the cybersecurity world.
Yeah,
So basically what
supply chain,
happened
right?
was oh, yeah, yeah, basically what happened was there was long-term persistent access inside F5, and they were able to access some of the source code for the big IP product, as well as look at some configurations and vulnerability information that hadn't been released. So pretty significant access, and we don't know how long they had it, but it says long term, so that's probably long enough. And yeah, that's definitely something to worry about. F5's widely used by many,
Oh
many,
man,
many large
Es-
companies,
especially
and yeah,
in the federal space, which I think they were entitled to tell CISA, give them reports on their statuses, but huge in the federal space.
yeah. And I mean, I think an indicator of how important this is this came out on the 15th of October, and CISA said federal agencies need to patch by October 22nd. So that's a pretty tight turnaround
That's a tight
to
turnaround.
get, yeah. And it's an emergency directive. So, they're paying attention. We should probably be paying attention. And what are some of the things we can do? Obviously, patching is always there. Looks like they've put out some patches, and then you can also look at are you collecting logs from your big IP products? And there's specific logs we mentioned in our Pulse alert that our customers get that you can capture and then build detections on.
Yeah.
And actually, we already have some detections that
And
you can just deploy.
I know F5 they have their own threat hunting guide and config as well that they released as detection mechanisms against this, I think. But yeah, wow, that definitely took a toll. Almost more than the outage yesterday, which really took a toll on my tech stack. I couldn't do anything on the AWS.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
in that
that was a
case,
big one for sure.
not necessarily a cybersecurity incident, but is one of those HA things. But I mean, that makes you really put to question: is should Amazon really have as much control to an entire economy and infrastructure for quite literally every website? That should be kind of dispersed across other companies.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, they got the availability zones and the regions, and are you in multiple availability zones? Are you in multiple regions? Or you have multiple cloud providers? But then it gets pretty complicated pretty quick too. So
Yeah, I don't know, dismangle Jeff Bezos, but that's besides the point. M trends, Scott. Let's talk about the M trends. I have it pulled up here. We can go through some of the highlights that our listeners would find really interesting. But first and foremost, huge. I want to spotlight this amazing visual, like a Gantt chart that covers the groups, the exploits across the last couple of years. Such a sexy view. I added that in one of my latest LinkedIn posts. But specifically, what were the highlights? So on page 10, right, fifth year running, right, exploits are still the top way in, right? Vulnerabilities obviously continue to be the front door that threat actors just happen to walk through the easiest, the best, right? But what I find the most interesting is these two right here, the email phishing and stolen credentials. Stolen credentials literally leapfrog phishing, right? In 2024, if you look at the visual at the bottom from 2024, phishing has dropped, right? While credential based intrusions they jumped up in front, right? They're everywhere all the time, and I think that was probably one of the many highlights from this report to me.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, later on in the report, there's an article about info stealers, and that's definitely contributing to this rise of stolen credential.
The info stealers, I mean, every creds are everywhere. Like there's info stealers, of course. There's also key loggers. There's also all these data dumps you find in a bunch of different pockets of places. People also just the basics. People reusing their Fortnite password for Okta, right? It's credential soup everywhere. So what does this mean for us?
This means, this means that this means the
Sorry, I'm getting distracted because of
no,
the Chicago fire truck is like the. But Zoom probably does it, or no, Riverside. This is your first time on Riverside. Riverside does a good job of tuning it out, but yeah, it's ringing in my ear. But what does this mean for us about MFA?
oh yeah, well, I mean, definitely want to have MFA enabled. That's littered throughout this report. And also from detection engineering, you should consider these trends when you're focusing on what detections to create and implement.
First, yeah, and also I've been reading a lot about. Not that I'm looped into the IAM world per se, but I do have one of my girlfriends is, and she's like the me and constantly evangelizing FIDO2 compliant passwordless. And so definitely go follow her for that. Phishing. Phishing is quiet quitting. Highlight number 2. So if you look at this, let me see if I can zoom it. I don't think I'm not an expert in Riverside yet, but if you see the chart at the bottom, again, page 10, we're still on this. Phishing over the past 3 years, as phishing went from 22 to 17 to 14, while credentials went up during those same time from 10 to 16, and web compromise nearly doubled, right, from 5 to almost 10, and which is crazy because you saw all of the vendor demos. They have to update their demos because everything is always starting with phishing. A phishing attack, a phishing simulation, a phishing playbook, a phishing detection, right? A phishing then followed by an execution. Y'all need to be updating your playbooks now.
Yeah, and one thing I think this kind of leads into is the rise in importance of identity and access management logs and building detections on those logs, which is a pretty tough thing to do, but definitely super important, as we can see here.
That also back what you were saying about info stealers. I think info stealers are maybe they're cheaper and faster to use, and they don't really need to convince you per se. Like, it doesn't have that social engineering factor that's required in phishing. So maybe that's why it tended to have that leap, right? They just need your browser and one bad click. That was pretty neat. Or I guess in however way you look at it. I'm gonna skip through these exploits because you just got to do what you got to do with these.
Wait, go back to page 11.
Oh, that's what you wanted, page 11. What did you find interesting on page 11?
Yeah. So right there in the middle of the page, Mandiant was unable to determine the initial infection vector for 34% of the 2024 intrusions. So what does that tell us? Well, the next sentence kind of gives away my punchline here, but deficiencies in logging and detection. That's something specifically called out in the report, and I think something everyone's aware of. It's hard to log everything, and it's hard to build detections on everything, but it's really important, and you got to do it.
Well, some people don't have the monies for that, Scott.
That's true, and we'll talk about prioritization later.
Again, am I good to skip the exploits now? Because I really don't want to talk about the PAN-OS Global Protect Palo Alto Network Firewall exploits.
I got one more for you on page 13.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so this one's pretty interesting. I found it really interesting. It's just talking about where were organizations notified or who found out that they had a problem, a compromise. And you can see the trend changing over time. In the past, particularly in 2011, almost 100%, 94% of compromises were determined by the internal organization, the organization itself. But now, fast forward to 2024, and it's pretty close to 60-40, with 40% of the problems, the compromises, being identified by an external source other than the organization.
Could that be because of the rise of detection engineers and internal pen testing teams and tools that have now invested more into building these like blue teams in the organization to exactly do this kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's tough because we are seeing a lot. There's still a lot of notifications coming from external entities, so it's tough to say, but it's definitely important. And yeah, I mean, again, it probably feeds into the visibility and detection capability. So yeah, definitely the more investments companies are making, the better they'll do on this.
Oh, for sure. But it's 10 times better to find something internally first, right? Rather than letting you know they found something.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of this contributes to bounties. I wonder if any of these, is a bounty-led effort here.
Yeah, I don't know. But it does include, like federal organizations, or mentions law enforcement. So presumably if you're getting told by them, I'd assume it's a little later in the game than if you just had an alert fire the moment it happened.
Hmm. A lot of money involved with with bounties. So some more info on the dwell time distribution, which was interesting. It's now at, what was it, 45% under a week right now. 2024 it takes over 45% of the attacks. It took him about a week to find the attack itself, and then the 17 almost 30 days, and then the rest of it over that, which that's pretty concerning that it takes about a week to find an attack.
Yeah, and actually on the previous page, it does go through the dwell time. It kind of backs up what I just said. Internal is about 10 days, and
uh,
external is 26. So
26 days, so definitely
adversary is
much
only
higher.
5, though, so because they're quick about it if they want to tell you.
Oh, they'll let you know ASAP. Let's go to the malware. I think that's really the core of this report is malware trends, right? What types of malware groups that were consistent or were found within those IR engagements, which was, I believe, probably the most interesting part of this. Let's see, it looks like they were able to track 632 malware families, and the distribution of them. If you look at the previous year, the most frequently seen malware families, we saw Beacon in 2024, but compared to previous years, it went pretty quiet. It was once kind of the king of its time. If you look at the distribution between 2020 and 2024, 2021, it reached like 28% of all malware attacks were from this Beacon group, and that just really went down to 5 this year, which is that it going quiet is kind of a loud thing, right? The credit really goes to the operation. What was it called? Here in the notes, it said MORPHEUS, right? It really helped choke off that illicit Cobalt Strike infrastructure, which is, I think, what per se it tells us that they're not retiring tools because they're done. They're just retiring them because us as defenders, as blue team folk, we're getting ahead of it. We're finding detection mechanisms against Cobalt Strike, so they got to move on to their next thing.
Yeah, that really shows the effectiveness of that Morpheus campaign.
Yeah, exactly. They're also multiplying like the threat groups are multiplying like malware as well. This Venn diagram group is probably my favorite piece well, besides the Gantt chart, this is probably my second favorite visual in the whole report. Mandiant tracked 737 new threat clusters in 2024 alone, which is like what, three new ones a day, or two new ones a day. And the here in the middle, right, the share between the shared new and the ones they've already observed before, only 233 were, wait, no, this is confusing me. New and observed threat groups are what they share in common, and then the 302 they had already previously observed before, but just 737 new, just by itself, new groups, which was pretty crazy because,
Yeah.
yeah.
And 233 of the new groups of that 737, Mandiant actively saw. So they
Ah,
saw a decent amount of the new ones.
so there were 737 new groups, but out of those, only 233 they saw.
Yep. And then they saw 302 total. So almost all the groups they saw were new.
Ah, look at that. Look at that. And then down here, this little half donut, it looks like 4 were known APT groups from China, Russia, and Iran. One of them was a Finn group, and the rest of the 297 were UNC, which Mandiant classifies as unknown or uncategorized.
So it sounds like a lot of smaller groups then.
A lot of smaller up and coming groups, I guess. What would you call them? The what are they called?
Kind of
The
like the criminal gangs, that kind of thing.
no, what is that? What are those called? Like when a player is like on like
Oh,
you're
rising
a
star or
rising star.
something.
You're a rising star of a threat group. Okay, the Venn diagram has got to be, but the Venn diagram here, confusing here, but it really should be a little bit easier to understand. I guess it's what they observed in their IR engagements, but usually Venn diagrams are probably one of the most simple and easiest tools to use. I mean, I have a pretty big Venn diagram obsession, right? Here they're trying to do the overlap of new versus observed versus what they've already seen in the past, but it really is kind of, it's more simple than that. And actually, I'm inspired to post my next LinkedIn post to talk about what Andrew Van Vliet once talked about is like the overlap between threat hunting and detection engineering, right? Where that overlap is exactly, and then I'm gonna throw in some more, SecOp related things in there. But really obsessed with Venn diagrams right now. Have this game that I recommend. Have a game recommendation for you. So it's called, I think I have it here. It's called Then with Benefits, kind of like Friends with Benefits. And it's a different game every single time because it shows up all of these topics, and whoever is playing has to actually write in what could be the like the shared in common thing based on the two topics that it gives. And it's truly a different game every single time because it depends on like your own creativity. So, and it's much more simpler than this. I don't know why this like threat group thing is throwing me off, but I digress. Next time you're back in Chicago, we're definitely playing that game. um,
Sounds
okay,
good.
threat groups.
We'll see whose threat groups are the most overlapping.
Well, there's two that allegedly graduated. The two UNC groups that got graduated into full APTs, fully named APTs. I guess that's what I guess a graduation is, right? When you're not a rising star anymore, or you're not a rookie, and then now you actually made it big in the fucking in the threat group like world, right? That's when you know you made it famous. And that there was two, and that was APT 44, which folks also known as Sandworm, and APT 45, which is the DPRK, right? The North Korea up to financial and even nuclear shenanigans. So let's start with the APT 44, which I think is a bit more of that disruptor there. Okay, APT 44. This one was a Russian GRU backend, no, GRU backed the either Sandworm, or it also I think was going as Frozen Barents. And this has been a decade long operation, I would say, disruptive operations, because back we can see it date back from 2015 to 2016. They took down most of Ukraine's power grid. In the following year, they launched the NotPetya, right, which was, that goes without saying.
Huge.
Yeah, and then 2018, they were also responsible for crashing the pitch and pang. No, I totally botched that, but the Olympics, right, in the opening ceremony. So that one, it's a decade long thing that we're talking about here. Second one was APT 45, the DPRK's newish type of player, which is the North Korea backed, active since I think even way before 2015, right? It was active since even, I mean, long before that. And that one, some notable events I have here were the nuclear research facilities that they targeted, India in 2019. And while Mandiant says that it is moderately sophisticated, it's, I mean, it's ambitious in terms of the financial motive. There was definitely a surge of fraudulent job postings and pretending to be remote workers and stuff like that. It's hard to say whether this was related, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, there was a great sticker at DEF CON that was like a LinkedIn, kind of like a business card. And
Yeah,
then
I
in the middle,
was.
it looked like LinkedIn, and it had the Ukrainian military outfit person, person in the get up
I do
in the
remember
middle.
that.
So
I do remember that. Those were the two grads. So congratulations to them. What were the? We had some ransomware operations. We had
yeah, page 34.
uh huh.
I got a little bit to say
Cloud
there.
compromise, email phishing 39%, stolen credentials 35%, and other 14% as far as cloud infection vectors.
Yeah, and basically just cloud still. I mean, obviously, cloud's super important, as we just saw 2 days ago when a lot of things went down when Amazon had an issue.
That was
But, you know,
cybersecurity related.
but organizations frequently still have visibility issues in the cloud.
Mm.
And maybe, obviously, if they have visibility issues, they're not going to have detection. So, focusing on those visibility issues, getting logs, and building detections on it, super important and continues to be important. I searched, and clouds mentioned 252 times in this report. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
mean, now that's just the
And
standard.
yeah, and one of their suggestions I thought was good. They suggested, if you're unsure what your visibility is, you could have a red team come in with some credentials and see what they could do, and see if you even have logs. Like, we went to a really interesting talk at DEF CON
Mhm.
where this guy went through a ton of exploits, and more than half of them were like, oh, this doesn't create any logs in the cloud. This doesn't create logs. But so see if you have logs for these things, and then if you do, can you create some detections?
Yeah, totally. And if it doesn't create logs, what are we gonna do about that? We're
Then
fucked.
you gotta talk to the vendor, try to get them to create some logs.
Yeah, by the time we submit a request for enhancement, then it's by next year's roadmap. And there's all that window of time, but someone went through that recently with CrowdStrike. But what else? The email phishing and stolen credentials. That's looks like phishing is still in the lead here over stolen credentials, unlike the previous.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess maybe people are using a little better credentials in the cloud than they are in other places.
Yeah, I would hope so with those tokens.
Yeah, so this was one of our big takeaways from this report, and it's that section there, and I'm just going to read it because it's pretty telling, I think.
It is.
Mandiant experts observed adversaries use 71% of the MITRE attack techniques and 40% of the sub-techniques during 2024.
Mm.
And so I'll pause there and comment on that. That means if you're building detections, implementing detections, selecting log sources, focus on the 70% that they're using. And there might be 30% that you could have a little less emphasis on. Okay, now resume quote. This is relatively consistent with the two previous M-Trend reporting periods, during which nearly 3/4 of techniques and nearly half of sub-techniques were actively observed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty interesting finding, showing that the techniques are staying consistent. And it goes on to say a little more. MITRE attack techniques in 2024 largely mirrored those of 2023, showing these techniques have remained remarkably stable for several years. In nearly half of investigations, Mandiant investigators noted the use of a few specific attacks, and yeah, I'm not going to go through all that, but the point for us and the big takeaway here, if you're prioritizing log sources, prioritizing detection implementations or creations, is focus on the stable techniques that have been prevalent. And on the next page, they have some examples. It's page 36 of the top 10 most frequently seen techniques
Mm-hmm.
and sub-techniques.
So let's go through them. So most frequently seen MITRE techniques, number one in the rankings is T1059, command and scripting interpreter at 44%. Second one is obfuscated files or information, T1027, 37%. And three, oh, this one was a given. I thought this one was going to actually go first. Any RCE, right, remote services, which was at the third in the ranking, 35%. Fourth, file and directory discovery, any end mapping, all of that, WMIC, 34%. And the top fifth one was indicator removal, TIO70, with 29%. And the sub-techniques, number one, PowerShell, surprise. But yeah, what Venn diagram can we apply here?
Yeah, I mean, to me, what stood out here, particularly in the number one technique, command scripting and interpreter, and then the number one sub technique, PowerShell, just kind of reads living off the land to me. So
LOL.
I think there's a continued focus there. It's not likely to go away, and really emphasizes the need to monitor the usage of legitimate tools. PowerShell being a great example. A legitimate tool might be used widely in your organization, but also can do a lot of bad stuff. And for the reason that it can be widely used, it can be pretty tough to detect. But the first step is to always collect the log.
Yeah. Not an LOL about living off the land. LOLs. And but the second one, SMB, admin shares, yeah, all of these just your own binaries, very legitimate uses of them, which is, you're right, the most difficult to detect, which makes you kind of want to scream sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
Which
and I
actually,
mean,
that's a good segue to my scream therapy suggestion I was gonna bring up on the podcast today, Scott.
yeah,
So, scream therapy, and I'll preface it a little bit. So, I first decided to try it out because there is this lady I came across on TikTok who she was on there and recorded herself in a wedding dress drinking and screaming and just really releasing pain. I wouldn't call it crashing out per se, but you could literally see the release of hurt. Like she had waited 2 years, she was patient, she took her time, she just really thought, this man loved her, and he obviously didn't, because he did her worse than anybody else in her life have ever did her. Like it's just the worst, but you could just see how that was healing. And I've been really trying to just, on really rough days like the day I had yesterday, which was the reason why we had to keep rescheduling this podcast, but is just screaming. Just go and scream into a pillow, or just scream into an abyss somewhere in your, hopefully in your apartment, so it doesn't disturb anybody. But it really does work, and I really think you should give it a go.
yeah, maybe I will. One I'll throw out there actually is I've done the deprivation tank, sensory deprivation tank. That's pretty cool. You
What
get
is
in the
wait? What is
tank
that?
and you get in there's different versions, but the one I did was a room. You kind of walk into a room and it's filled with water that's really buoyant. And so you lang in the water and it's all black and it's kind of like makes it easier
Could
to
you go
meditate, I
in
guess.
and have the same effect, like let's say in the Dead Sea?
Yeah.
You could
Yeah, I
probably have
guess
the same
so.
effect. Yeah.
If you have access to that.
Well, I think that that's a little bit hard to get access to, even what you're talking about. So I think screaming is probably a cheaper form of therapy.
That's true. They are around, but yeah, no, it's definitely you probably have to go somewhere and yeah.
I have
One
found it
oh,
very helpful to me.
yeah.
So, targeted industries. This is the last thing we'll cover, and that is that financial services takes the most hits yet again. 17% of all of the incidents last year hit financial services organizations, and that followed by tech, and then healthcare, and then government after that. And I think that's very neat because it does line up with the majority of our Anvologic customer base. And just wanted to just really spotlight that, but also brag about you for a second, Scott, because I know that because of this, the majority of our customer base being, in the FSI, they have some of the most demanding security data sets in the world that you have to wrangle LLMs against, and this just can't be an easy job, right? So that's why I think we're back to scream therapy.
Scream it out.
Scream it out. But yeah, the financial services. Why? Maybe because they've got the most money, I think, obviously. The most
Yeah,
IP
for
in the
sure.
game.
For sure. Money, I mean, there was another page. Money's one of the top motivators, and by far, really. And then I think this one of the second or third was espionage. So that might be some of the other ones you see in there, high tech or government, maybe
Mm.
healthcare.
business and professional services,
telecommunications
high
group.
tech. Yeah. What followed after that a little bit? I think that which one was the least targeted is agriculture and forestry. I think threat actors are green. They're like, but they're tree huggers.
Yeah, that might just be honestly just it might just be opportunity there. They just are doing something automated in in mass, and it just happens to find something. Probably
Yeah.
a lot of those smaller ones are.
Yeah. I'm surprised they're not going after. I really thought aerospace and defense would be up there,
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess maybe they're really,
especially right
really.
now during our geopolitical climate.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting
And
that.
yet, still till this day, no one is targeting the education sector to erase our student loans. What are we doing?
I don't know. I don't know how. I guess they don't see a lot of. They're not going to make a lot of money off that. So
No, no, they're not. No, they're not. Well, I think that's a wrap for this week's dispatch. We went from credential soup to the supply chain infernos to scream therapy, free screen therapy, and that if you're not, letting out, you may be bottling it up and it'll come out in inconvenient ways. So thank you, Scott, for once again keeping us calm and collected, keeping me calm and collected, whether it's about prompt injections or, this threat group bingo. You're definitely, as our friend Patrick would say, the calm against the unhingedness. I think our pairing our pairing chemistry works pretty cool. Folks, don't forget to share and send us. And if you have any ideas on the SecOps Venn diagrams, definitely send those in. So until next time, thank you.
yeah, oh, I don't know if I should say, but
Yeah, same.
I always enjoy being on here. So thanks. Always great time.
Thank you.